Welcome, Wido. Wido, the Hollander, he's the new VP of the CloudStack project, and we're here today with him to have a small chat about the project, the future of the project, technologies in general, building open source clouds, and everything around that topic. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Yvette. Yeah, so indeed, Wido the Hollander. I've been in the hosting and IT industry since 2004, so it's about 23 years now, 22, 23 years. My background is in hosting, a hosting company, hosting technology, and I've been a user, a contributor, and PMC member, and actually a VP member before of the Apache CloudStack project.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your IT career? You mentioned you have had a hosting company, you have a long history in the IT field, so I think for the project members it's going to be interesting to understand a bit more.
Yeah, so I always ran a hosting company, a web hosting company. Websites need to be somewhere, they need to be facilitated, we provided hosting. And during that journey, we had our own homebrew KVM environment built with bash scripts, and we looked for something else. And this is when I stumbled upon, which was cloud.com back then from Citrix, which was about to be donated to the Apache Software Foundation. So through that journey, we started adopting Apache CloudStack in my hosting company, and we have been using it ever since.
And how did you actually start your IT career?
My IT career, that's interesting. It was a hobby on high school. Some people asked me if I could build a website, so I started building websites. I think it's a very classical thing back in the days where a teenager starts building websites. And I figured, well, maybe I can host these websites as well, so I built my own server.
Was it a static HTML website? Or?
It was some static HTML, a bit of PHP, and I still know that in my first summer, I didn't know how to do something in PHP, and a friend of mine, he was on holiday, and I needed to wait for him to get back from a holiday before I could figure out how to do this in PHP, because back then there was no Stack Overflow, there was no ChatGPT. There was just people you knew, or you had a book which could tell you how to do things. So it was plain HTML, a bit of PHP, building the first websites, and from there on it evolved in also hosting these websites on my own server, and that slowly transitioned into a web hosting company. Well, fast forward 22 years later, here we are.
Going back to CloudStack, what was your first contribution to the project?
My first contribution to the project was actually an improvement in the Debian and Ubuntu packaging. I looked this up, I think it was back in 2011. I sent my first, it was not a pull request, but I sent my first patches to improve the packaging for Ubuntu.
And you are already a lot of years in the project, so what are you seeing? Is it evolving? What are the biggest CloudStack strengths?
Well, the strength has been, for me, for 15 years now, CloudStack is a reliable foundation to build your company upon. So there have been many great features, bugs have been resolved, enhancements in CloudStack, there have been revolutions and evolutions within CloudStack. But the main thing is it's reliable. And I'm not talking about a technical reliability, more about the project. It's governed properly. It's a reliable thing you can count on for the future.
If you need to convince a very skeptical CTO about choosing CloudStack versus using, let's say, other open source technology, or the second case, a proprietary technology, in 60 seconds, what would be your pitch?
Okay, 60 seconds. As I just mentioned, the CloudStack is reliable. It's not, and for me, that's mainly about the governance. If you look at any proprietary solution or a other open source solution or CloudStack, from a stability perspective, they are identical. Performance-wise, they are almost identical. It's the KVM hypervisor. If you go for someone else, you might have a different hypervisor, but let's say it is the KVM hypervisor. The governance of the ASF, the Apache Software Foundation, that's a truly reliable foundation to run your company upon. Commercial companies behind an open source project, we have seen of those examples in the past where overnight licensing changes and it's now closed source. That is not something you could build your company upon for the future. With Apache CloudStack, you deploy Apache CloudStack today, and in 20 years time, the code will still be freely available to run your company on. And 20 years, I know that's quite a statement, but I'm pretty sure about this.
And you're stepping currently in the role of the VP. What is actually the VP responsible for?
The project is about the contributors, about the PMC members, about the community. The VP, I would say more, it's somebody who keeps everybody together, talks with the ASF, is the face of the project for a year, and comes up with a couple of ideas, but in the end it comes from the community. So, and these kinds of interviews are also part of the VP, promoting the project, making sure it stays healthy, and signaling when something goes wrong. it's always have to go to a phase 2 project.
Do you also have any ideas about what could be improved in the project?
I think it's going to be evolutions within CloudStack. We are quite feature ready. If you look at the infrastructure as a service, there are a few upcoming features I am looking forward to. For example, the DNS provider, where you can manage DNS from CloudStack. So you have a single environment where you can manage VMs, object storage, and then also DNS connected to different providers. And I would like to personally investigate a possibility where we can get some telemetry back to the project on an opt-in basis, so that we can gain more insights on how CloudStack is being used. I think that would be very valuable to the project.
Is there something which you would change or recommend so that the adoption of CloudStack can be accelerated?
I still think that a lot of people assume you need to have a very large deployment before CloudStack is applicable to your organization. There are other projects out there which people use for their hobby, and then they think, oh, this also works for my small company. CloudStack still seems like this giant monster for some people, where they think, oh no, I need to be a hyperscaler almost before using CloudStack, and that's a myth I would like to bust, because even with just a few servers, you could have a great Apache CloudStack deployment.
I could actually also agree with you, because in the last days we are on a technical conference, so we have been speaking with many companies which wants to start small with just a few hosts and then to expand. So I also think it's a solution which is quite suitable for small deployments, but also it has all of the capabilities and enterprise features for very, very large deployments.
I can't agree more. Recently, within our group, we deployed a new CloudStack environment in the UK, 5 hypervisors and Ceph storage underneath. It all fits in one cabinet, and they are super happy because of these enterprise features. The multi-tenancy, the security grouping, the project, the accounting, the usage recording, those are killer features for those companies. And that's what you get with CloudStack, a single API, a customizable UI for end users, but it's a fairly small deployment. It might grow in the coming years, it will probably grow in the coming years, but it doesn't have to be always a big deployment. One cabinet in a data center can be a really great CloudStack deployment.
And going back to the VP role, so CloudStack is open source, there isn't any commercial interest. What drives your passion for the project, and why do you want to contribute?
As I said, my background is in a hosting company where we use Apache CloudStack. I am now CTO of Your Online, a group of hosting companies in Europe and North America. And we are extensive CloudStack users. And I feel from my role as CTO, as my responsibility to also give back to the project. We do this by supporting all kinds of events, and now also from my role supporting the project, making sure it stays healthy. Yes, open source is for free, but it can only stay for free and only develop if we all contribute a bit. And contributing can be code, can be documentation, can be representation at a event somewhere like this, where we are now in Germany, or some other locations. So that is giving back to the project.
And Apache Software Foundation is saying community over code. So with open source projects, it's also about community and culture. What kind of culture would you like to cultivate in the community?
The culture should be that everybody is welcome, and we should respect everybody and be grateful for anything somebody contributes. It could be a single line of code, could be a line of documentation. We should not look down upon a few people. We should accept people to make mistakes. When they submit a PR, we should be open to anybody submitting a pull request in GitHub, because what I heard from feedback from some developers is that it sometimes feels very scary to send your first pull request to a GitHub project which has been around for 15 years, and then you come along from somewhere on this planet and you send your first pull request. You're like, oh, what's going to happen? Are they going to be angry with me if I make a mistake? No, everybody should be welcome to open their first PR, and we should welcome that and encourage people to send more PRs. Obviously, every PR being sent needs to be reviewed. We need people for that, and I think every contributor should also understand that there might not always be the resources available to review your PR.
Immediately, of course.
Immediately. But the same goes for issues. I have seen users where they use CloudStack, they open an issue on GitHub, and they get angry with the project that there's no response within a day or two, or their issue is not being resolved. And then sometimes my answer is, well, maybe you should hire somebody to address the issue within CloudStack. It's not that you can just open an issue and expect other people to spend their time on fixing an issue you are running into.
Is the project and the user base growing?
It is still growing, yes. And I think that is a misconception which sometimes exists, because CloudStack just is there as an infrastructure as a service, powering these enormous environments, but also many smaller environments, but it's taken for granted by so many people. So it's no longer in the really big hype cycle. As I said, there's evolutions, no longer revolutions. It is, running companies, supporting companies, and yes, the number of companies is growing, and we do see that there are quite some new users who are coming from different closed source technologies. They are now moving towards open source, and they are attracted by Apache CloudStack, and they're deploying it. Sometimes somebody walks up to somebody in the project and says, well, I deployed CloudStack and it works. Like, okay, how big is it? Well, yeah, a couple of hosts, it works fine, and we've been running for a year. Interesting, we never heard about you.
We very regularly have some use cases in which we discover new users for which we have never ever heard. And as you mentioned, we are currently at CloudFest in Germany. I personally had a situation with a company which came to our booth and asked them, do you know about CloudStack? Yeah, we're running it in production, but we have never heard about you.
So when do you go to an event? So that's I want to encourage everybody, come to the CloudStack Collaboration Conference, which is held annually in November. Go to meetups, go to all kinds of conferences, be together, and people should exchange ideas, meet the community, meet other people, users, meet developers. That's really also a way of contributing. So to anybody being employed somewhere, I think the employer should just pay a plane ticket, train ticket, hotel. That's also contributing, sending people to events.
Definitely, because that's also growing the community.
That is growing the community, yes, correct.
Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself? What are you doing when you're not coding and working?
Well, I'm not coding that much anymore. So about myself, I used to code a lot. I travel a lot for work and during the week, but in the weekend I'm at home with my kids. I like to do running, mountain biking, being outside, just not touching my laptop. I try to not touch my laptop in the weekend. That's,
what would surprise us about you? Any hidden secrets?
What would surprise you about me? Well, my days are quite chaotic. If somebody thinks I work very, very structured, no, that's not the case. If I sometimes look back on a day and what I did, I'm like, what did I do this day? And I did all kinds of things. So it's what we call context switching in IT. Well, I do this on a daily basis. My days sometimes feel pretty chaotic, and that might surprise you.
At the end, something like a summary, and what would you say to the community?
At first, to the community, I want to thank everybody for contributing, for being part of the project. We have some members of the project for a very long time already, so thank you for being around for such a long time. And I would like to encourage everybody to contribute more, and new users to step into the community, be active, stand up, and you are more than welcome to send in contributions, which can be documentation again, pull requests for code, but be at events, be vocal, or just help somebody on the mailing list. If somebody sends an email reply in the mailing list saying, hey, I can help you, and that is sometimes just a one-liner, and be kind to each other.
Thank you very much, Wido, and good luck, and
Yvette.
a lot of success in the new role.
Thank you.